Hey, how are you? Good, I'm Bill here.
Yeah, they named one after.
Oh, really?
It's Michael Lord.
Oh,
It's literally changing.
Okay, guys, we're gonna get going with we have a few bills that we want to get moving on. So why don't our members take their seats? And we've got three bills that are basically departmental bills upon request. We're gonna start with Senate Bill 292 from our Secretary of State's office, and I see a familiar face. Michael Laurie is gonna come up to the witness stand, and that is the only witness on this bill. And basically all the bill does is it renames the title of Assistant Secretary of State to Deputy Secretary of State. Takes effect June 1, 2024. And with that, Mr. Laurie, again, you're the lone witness. Are you can I just ask, are you the person who will have this new title, or
Well,
just curious?
I think you just explained the bill, but
Okay.
actually,
Okay, well,
I have the title and it's been the title for many decades, but the statute hasn't changed. I just happen
okay.
to catch it.
I don't want to testify
Sure.
for you. I'm going to yield to you
Okay,
on Senate Bill 292.
thank you. Michael Laurie, for the record, Deputy Secretary of State. And that's been my title since I was honored to be appointed, a political appointee by the Miller administration. It's the honor of my life. And I should just quip real quick that my son, Edmund, who we call E, is 3 today. So I like the E3 committee. And real quick, I don't need to take up any time. Hopefully there are not many questions. This is just clarifying in the statute where it used to say Assistant Secretary of State in 3 places in the statute. It's now Deputy Secretary of State just in the statute. That has been the title for at least the last 3 administrations for all political appointees in this position.
Okay, Senator Carrozza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be very brief. I want to thank you, Mr. Deputy Secretary, for your constituent service. I had a couple reasons to contact you during the interim, and especially when it came to a sensitive memorial flag flown over the State House. And I again wanted to thank you for that outstanding constituent service.
It's my pleasure. And there are a lot of services the Office of the Secretary of State provides. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm actually the legislative liaison as well. So happy to help.
Okay, any additional questions for our lone witness? Okay, seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on Senate Bill 292. We're going to next move to Senate Bill 297 from our Department of Labor. Let me just hold on one second. Okay, our 2 witnesses signed up. We've got one virtual, John Dove. Is anybody one in person is Mr. Dove here? Okay, then the only other witnesses, we have a virtual witness. Anybody lined up here? Okay, our crack whip Department of Labor has sent no witnesses for their department bill. I will describe the bill in a heartbeat here. Again, we're on 297. The department bill reduces the number of years from 12 to 5 that an engineer member of the State Board of Professional Engineers must have practiced engineering. So that is the bill. We have no witnesses. So that concludes the bill hearing on Senate Bill 297. I believe, okay, calling it once, twice, 3 times. Any witnesses from the Department of Labor? Okay, they have been advised. Are you from the Department of Labor? Okay. Okay, I don't think I was about to do a gavel, but you right in the nick of time. So is John Dove?
Yes, sir, I am here.
Okay. Now is Zebby Thomas also here or virtual, or?
He should be virtual.
Okay, so we're going to take you and then we'll take him virtual, and that's the extent of our witnesses. So again, this just reduces the number of years from 12 to 5 that an engineer member of the State Board of Professional Engineers must have practiced engineering. So Mr. Dove, why don't you tell us again who you are, what your title is, and why this is a good idea?
Yes, sir. May I turn this microphone on or next on? Okay. Good afternoon. For the record, my name is John Dove. I'm the Commissioner of Occupational and Professional Licensing at the Maryland Department of Labor. I would like to thank Chair Feldman and all the Energy, Education, Environment Committee members for allowing me to introduce SB 297, entitled State Board for Professional Engineers, Engineer Members, Qualifications. And I would like to explain why the passing of this bill would benefit all citizens of Maryland. The Board for Professional Engineers, PE, seeks to amend a section of their Title Act to reduce the number of years of experience from 12 to 5 years of professional practice for applicants to be eligible for appointment to the Maryland PE Board. The board deems that the 12-year requirement could be considered a barrier to allowing younger individuals, emerging professionals to serve on the board. The board also considered that this change could expand the pool of eligible candidates, encourage diversity of the board, as well as better align with the requirements of other professional design boards in Maryland. The Board for Professional Engineers qualifies and licenses individuals seeking licensure and issues permits to business entities through which engineering is practiced. The board regulates the practice of engineering, investigates complaints against licensees, as well as complaints related to the unlicensed practice. The board may issue a reprimand, suspend or revoke a license or permit, and or impose a fine for violations of its regulations. Professional engineers represent an integral aspect of the design and construction industry. Maryland professional licensees abide by a code of ethics to preserve the health, safety, and welfare of all citizens. The board respectfully requests a favorable report from the committee.
Okay, thank you for testimony. Any questions for our witness, Senator Hester? Looks like you're ready to, Senator Hester.
I was just trying to remember, did we have this bill last year?
We did not.
Okay, thank you.
We did not.
Senator Simoner.
Thank you. And I read your testimony and I see what you're trying to do, but looking at the language, the original language,
Okay.
basically it says you have some experience and you've been a leader, and it was 12 years and 5 years. Now what you're doing in this bill is making them the same year requirement. So it seems redundant to say you have to be practicing engineer for 5 years and then also be
A
an
leader.
important leader for 5 years. I mean, it seems, if you were staggering the years, I understand that, but what was the thought on, or what's the distinction between practicing engineering and also being responsible for important engineering work?
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not really sure how we were looking at that. The way I understood it is that you're going to get your 5 years of experience while you're there, and you're going to have some leadership experience along the way during that time period. So basically within the same time period. So you're going to have 5 years. If you got the 5 years, you'd be eligible for the board.
Okay, and maybe we can look at it, but
Yeah.
typically the way this is that once you have a minimum amount of work,
Right,
and then show some responsibility above a subset of that. And now that you're putting them both 5 years, it just doesn't seem to be the best way to draft it. That's all. So maybe we can tweak it and get your same accomplishment.
Okay, you can get back to us if you got some further explanation. Any
I'll reach in.
additional questions? Maybe we do have a virtual witness. Maybe he has some clarification, but any additional questions for Mr. Dove beyond Simon Ayer's question? Okay, seeing none, you're good. We're going to call up, let's see, Zevi Thomas.
Yes.
Do we have virtual? No? Okay, apparently there is no Department of Labor virtual
Yeah,
witness.
he may not be getting on till 3 o'clock, so I apologize.
Okay.
And that's dead.
Okay, well, that concludes the bill hearing on Senate Bill 297. Thank you guys for
Thank you.
coming in. We have one more departmental bill before we get to Senator Guile. And that is, and this again is another bill on request, Senate Bill 294. And this is from our information technology folks. And this particular legislation department bill makes various changes to the Department of Information Technology's oversight of major information technology development projects, et cetera, et cetera. If you look at the fiscal note, it explains it a little bit more. And so for this one, hopefully we've got witnesses. We've got in person, Katie Savage, is Secretary Savage here, and or Ashley Lehman. I guess that there were any indication of where our do-it witnesses are. Okay, let's just look out in the hall real quickly. Nobody? Okay, we're gonna do it like last time. Maybe they'll just reappear quickly as I'm about to gavel the bill down. Hi, Senator Bailey. Okay, we're gonna go do it. Witnesses, going once, twice, 3 times. Seeing none, that concludes the bill hearing on Senate Bill 294. And with that, our final bill of the day is Senator Guile on Senate Bill 888. 2 8s. Senator Guile, let's see, got any witnesses on your bill, hopefully?
I do, Mr. Chair. However, I believe that they thinking that they need to sign in at 3 p.m. I did reach out to my staff to give them a call to let them know that we're starting earlier than we had anticipated, but hopefully they'll get on.
Okay,
Otherwise, there is written testimony. We'll
okay, fair enough.
do
We'll,
the best we can.
yeah, I mean, we're almost at 3 o'clock and you've got 2 virtual witnesses. So why don't you
Correct.
present the bill? We'll take some questions and maybe we could, try to fill it up 10 minutes and hopefully your 2 witnesses will sign off. So-
We can.
And then
chat.
maybe even the do it folks will show up. Maybe they thought it was 3
Oh,
o'clock.
well, there's one on there right now.
Okay,
I
excellent.
see. Great.
Okay, so we're on Senate Bill 88 and
Mhm.
why don't you present the bill?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Senator Dawn Guile, District 33, here to present SB 88, Maryland Commission on Veterans and Military Families. So members of the committee, during the interim, I worked with Secretary Woods, our wonderful Maryland Veteran Affairs Secretary, on what are the things that his agency could be doing better to serve veterans as well as military families. I know that the General Assembly has done a lot of work, in particular on military spouse employment. And other issues, but to focus on not just the veteran, but also the family, and working as well with various advocates and stakeholders such as Blue Star Families and others, but with the goal of making Maryland a leader among military-friendly states. So with that, SB 88 would establish the Maryland Commission on Veterans and Military Families, which will be staffed by the Maryland Department of Veteran Affairs. The commission must study and make recommendations for developing and implementing a statewide strategic plan to make Maryland the best state for veterans and military families, including legislative and budgetary recommendations, and identify key performance indicators to assess the quality of life for veterans and military families in Maryland relative to other states. The commission must report its findings and recommendations to the governor and the General Assembly by December 1st, 2024. Recently, you may have seen that in December, Governor Moore had declared that 2024 is the year for military families in Maryland. As a longtime advocate for military families myself and the spouse of a 24-year veteran of the U.S. Army, I was particularly elated by this announcement. And consequently, in collaboration with the administration, including Secretary Woods, I'm proud to sponsor key bills aimed at providing tangible support for Maryland veterans and military families. And including the one before this committee today, significantly advances the realization of our shared vision, positioning Maryland as a leader among military-friendly states. An integral aspect of bringing this vision to life is the establishment of a framework where stakeholders can converge, exchange ideas, and outline a strategic course for both the administration and the General Assembly. This includes developing tangible steps needed to making Maryland an attractive place to live and work for veterans and military families. And that's what SB 88 is all about. The bill, based on a law that was passed in Virginia and made at the request of Secretary Woods, would create a commission comprised of members of the General Assembly, the Secretary of Veterans Affairs or the Secretary's designee, the Adjutant General or the Adjutant General's designee, the Chair of the Maryland Veterans Commission or the Chair's designee, the Chair of the Maryland Veterans Home Commission or the Chair's designee, the Chair of the Maryland College Collaboration for Student Veterans Commission, representatives that advocate on behalf of women veterans and members of the armed forces, and ultimately to study and make recommendations for developing and implementing a statewide strategic plan to making Maryland the best state for veterans and military families. They would report their findings and recommendations to the governor and the General Assembly by December 1st, 2024. Per the fiscal note, SB 88 has a marginal one-time expense to the state. However, the fiscal note makes it clear that if the commission completes its work after submitting its report, the contractual position may terminate earlier and the expenditures may be reduced. And for these reasons, as well as those that will be presented by the witnesses that are here with us today virtually, I respectfully request a favorable report on SB 88. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, why don't we take any questions for Senator Guile, and then we'll go to her two witnesses who both signed up favorable. And by the way, the website does imply that it was a 3 o'clock start time, not immediately after our briefing. So for the Do It folks who did show up, we'll take you and we'll hear the bill. But back to Senator Guile. Any questions for Senator Guile? We've got Senator Brooks.
For Senator from presenting the bill, was there any opposition to this bill?
I am unaware of any opposition to this bill, Senator.
Right answer. Thank you.
Our Vietnam War vet right there. Okay, any additional questions for our sponsor? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go to our two witnesses. We're going to start with Jason Spiegel. Mr. Spiegel,
District 17.
District 17, somebody we do know. And you've got 2 minutes. Each of you, the two witnesses will each have 2 minutes. So we'll start with you, Mr. Spiegel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Jason Spiegel, President of the Maryland Military Coalition, a nonpartisan organization of 21 veteran organizations representing over 150,000 Maryland uniformed services men and women and their families, almost half of the veterans in the state. We strongly support SB 88 and recommend a favorable report. I will try to be as brief as possible because Senator Guile covered so many of the critical reasons why this bill is necessary. But among the things that impress us are that while the legislature frequently considers and passes various proposals that improve the lives of veterans, often they are considered in isolation. What the commission will be able to do is develop a statewide strategic plan to guide future legislative and budgetary decisions. Maryland is in competition with other states for military retirees and members of the Guard and Reserve. Other states, notably Virginia, have established similar commissions to advise the legislature and governor, and we look forward to working with the commission after it's established. And particularly noteworthy will be key performance indicators and quantifiable metrics to assess the effectiveness of initiatives. The bill as drafted includes a diversity of voices and representation, which is critical, and we are also gratified to see the specific identification of a representative of the Federal Reserve, which is a significant part of the military force structure, but all too often is not represented specifically. We want to thank Senator Guile for her leadership in sponsoring this legislation and her strong support for veterans and military families. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Spiegel? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go to our final witness on this bill, Christopher Arnold. Mr. Arnold, you're up. 2 minutes.
Good morning, Chairman, or good afternoon, I should say, and honorable committee members. I was in Richmond this morning. It's great to be back before EEE for the 2024 legislative session. I'm Christopher Arnold, the Mid-Atlantic Region Liaison at the United States Department of Defense State Liaison Office, operating under the direction of the Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness. Senate Bill 88 gets us off to a great start in achieving the ambitious goal to make 2024 the year of the military family in Maryland. And Secretary Woods, the Maryland Military Installation Council, Senator Guile, and all the co-sponsors are really making the pie bigger, as you are not only addressing the specific needs of military families, but also enhancing Maryland's overall attractiveness as a place to live and work, benefiting the entire community. The Department of Defense has identified military community representation on state boards and councils as one of our top priorities, and the policies reflected in Senate Bill 88 align well by establishing this commission. including military voices on pertinent policy bodies, enables state governments to consider the unique needs, demographics, and priorities of our service members, veterans, and their families across critical issue areas such as education, healthcare, housing, employment, childcare, nutrition, and other key quality of life areas that benefit service member and family readiness, retention, recruiting, resiliency, and are top considerations in our strategic basing process. The commission established would be charged with the ambitious goal of making Maryland the most military family-friendly state in the nation, and to effectively meet this charge, the commission's membership must include representatives from the full military community whose firsthand knowledge of military life would prove invaluable and provide their unique perspective on how best to improve services, resources, and policies for our population. In addition, the Defense State Liaison Office stands ready to support the future commission in the development of these recommendations and strengthen Maryland as a great place for military families to live and an ideal place to be home to our installations. So we especially want to thank our bill sponsor, Senator Guile, members of the Veterans Caucus, and the Maryland Military Coalition for your leadership and tireless advocacy.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the witness, Mr. Arnold? Okay, seeing none, that concludes the bill hearing on Senate Bill 88.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And now we're going to go back to Senate Bill 294, because again, the website definitely suggested a 3 o'clock hearing. And flexible, yeah. So in any event, I'm going to call up for Senate Bill 294. Indulge me for 1 second. We've got Katie Savage, we've got Ashley Lehman, and Marcy Jacobs. And Secretary Savage, do you want to start? And then we'll take it from there.
Sure. Good
Senate
afternoon.
Bill, again, 294.
Well, great to see you again. I'm Katie Savage, the Secretary of the Department of Information Technology. A slightly different cast of characters with me today than yesterday. With me are Deputy Secretary and Chief Experience Officer Marcy Jacobs and Deputy Chief Experience Officer Ashley Lehman. So thank you for allowing me to testify in support of our departmental bill, SB 294, regarding major IT information technology development projects. The proposed changes in the bill are intended to enhance DOIT's ability to provide effective oversight and encourage the consistent use of IT best practices during MITDP. Again, that's major major information technology development projects. I didn't put it in this one, but we do plan to change the name. Planning and implementation. So right now, the headline here is that MITDPs are anchored on a dollar amount as opposed to the criticality of the project or the importance of it as a business function. So there are $5 million projects that are routine network maintenance, and there are $500 million projects that are pretty significant pilots. And so what we're seeking is the more discretion at which projects become MITDPs. Currently, we also lack sufficient authority to enforce our oversight, and that's something that we seek to address in this bill. So by expanding the definition of information technology, clearly defining MITDP criteria, and ensuring that the secretary has adequate level of discretion when making MITDP determinations, and strengthening our ability to monitor and redirect MITDPs as possible, DOIT can more faithfully assert that the state's valuable resources will be administered in a more effective and efficient manner. So a few of the key changes that I'd like to highlight. First, as I mentioned, expanding the definition of information technology to include networking and applications. That's clarifying what's in best practice today. 2, more clearly defining the criteria which will be used by the secretary in determining whether or not to designate a project as an MITDP. 3, providing the secretary adequate discretion in making MITDP determinations to ensure that if a project needs special attention because it is supporting a critical business function of the state, it has the proper funding and oversight it deserves. One note I'd like to make here, the bill was posted online with a fairly significant typo. It should read under section 3.5 or under 3.5 section 1I. It should say the estimated total cost of development exceeds equals or exceeds $5 million and /or the or is missing online. But that's obviously what we're seeking here is more discretion. So having the and or is really critical. So we're working with committee staff to amend that. Another change requiring a unit of state government to provide information to the secretary, which confirms that the project meets the MITDP criteria. We are currently often lacking that information provided by agencies, which reduces our ability to effectively monitor. And then finally, we seek in the bill to enhance our ability to monitor and control major IT development project fund expenditures. So associated with MITDP designations, there's a fund which we are empowered by DBM to put towards these projects. So we seek more discretion in our ability to ensure that the funding is spent to be in compliance with statewide plans, policies, and standards. So in summary, the legislative changes proposed here provide DO-IT the support we need to enforce the processes and policies that we have already put in place. The inability to consistently enforce these policies has resulted in project cost overruns, severe schedule delays, and limited visibility into agency product statuses. While legislation alone is not a substitute for effective agency project management, legislation here, we believe, might effectively serve to reinforce DO-IT's mandate as the state's oversight agency for major IT projects. So with that, I'll pause and see if there are any questions that we can answer.
Is your team here just for questions, or are they
Yes.
independently? Okay. Any questions for the secretary on this piece of legislation? Senator Hester.
Thank you. It's good to see you, Madam Secretary. And I appreciate how hard you and your team are working. I have a couple of questions, and if you can't answer them now, I'd take them offline too. So it's my understanding that currently some of the agencies, if they don't go through the MITDP, are trying to find other ways to get their work done. Will this bill correct that problem?
Other ways to get their work done in terms of
other ways in the budget, like so to circumvent the MITDP process.
Yeah.
Does this bill prevent that from happening?
It does have, and Ashley, keep me honest on this, it does call out the need for a partnership with DBM so that circumvention doesn't happen, to your point. That has been something that my understanding, predates me. If agencies didn't get funding through the MITDP fund, they might go circumvent us and go to DBM for that funding directly. So this does call out a partnership with them to stay coordinated in that. Ashley, if there's anything you would add.
I would just add that by tightening up the criteria and making it more defined, we're able to say these are the things that should be MITDPs and therefore would receive mandated oversight. So projects that meet those criteria should be considered.
Yeah, could you, because we're streaming online, nobody's going to hear you. Yeah. Yeah, it's flexible. Yeah.
This is only my time.
That's okay. Just you're doing great. But we want everybody to hear your great testimonies out on the internet.
Can I just say it was very brilliant, everything I said, and so trust me on that. Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Senator. Would the room like me to repeat anything that yes, okay. So by enhancing the criteria and better defining that through this legislation, we make it more clear as to which projects are considered MITDPs and therefore would be required to receive that oversight by DO-IT.
Yes,
Okay.
go on.
Okay, so I think that for several years now we've seen lack of capacity not only within DO-IT but within our agencies. So we had a hearing a year ago almost. Where we brought in several modernization projects and asked them for their lessons learned, and project management was the number one issue with all those projects. And so at that point, there was some discussion about whether DO-IT would have project managers or the agency would have project managers. And so I'm sorry, I just quickly looked at the bill. Which way does this go? Does this put the project management onus on DO-IT or on the agencies? And if it's on the agencies, are they ready for this?
So it's a great question. I'm glad you raised it. So my view is we need fewer better things. So part of the discretion that we lack right now is the ability to turn down MITDPs and to say, you're not ready for prime time. We did that a little bit this year, but what this bill really gives us is more authority to reflect back to the agencies, and going back to your question, ensuring that there's no run around us. If we're meeting with an agency to say, there's no possible way that you have no IT people in your department that could manage this project effectively, we're not going to grant you $25 million. So part of this is allowing us to be more judicious in saying the departments, might not be ready as yet to absorb this project. And we don't want to just, if it's a critical project, we obviously have to figure out a way to work with them to get to yes. We can't just say you don't have IT staff, so you can't embark on this project, but it does allow us to work with them to take the step back to say, how are you thinking about managing this project? How are you thinking about after this project ends, ensuring that there's ongoing development and maintenance and oversight? So that's one piece of this. The other question, to your point about project management, we can't lean in on recognizing our resources right now. We can't lean in on all of the projects. So reducing the number allows us to kind of ratio it a little bit better. So Marcy is here because, as you know, we're in the process of creating the Maryland Digital Service team, which will bring in-house some of that product management. So while, we can't lean in on all the MITDPs up front, we can start to identify a subset in this first year that are really critical that we do want to lean in on. The other piece of that, that we're also bringing on as part of the digital service team are just sort of the discovery effort. So people who can engage in user experience and design so that we can help them for the projects that we can't be, as Marcy would say, load bearing on. We can also help them identify what resources they need to be successful. So it's a combination of reducing the number of MITDPs, determining which ones we can lean in on, and then figuring out some kind of hybrid strategy for the ones that need to move forward and we might not have the ability to resource it during this first year where we're standing up the digital service team.
I think I like the hybrid approach.
Yeah.
I think it's really good to prioritize. I am concerned that we have some small, like, for example, the governor's grants office was here a year ago.
Yeah.
There are two people, they manage a ton of money.
Yeah.
And they really need a better system.
Yeah.
And there's no way they have IT staff.
Yeah.
So is that the kind of thing where you would lean in on it?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I would say that will be part of how we're racking and stacking the projects, where if to your point, if it's an agency that doesn't have the staff, it's a really critical function. That's a great example. The other thing that Marcy and Ashley are working through, and I'm glad you used the example of grants management, because there's a number of agencies that are all trying to independently stand up a grants management process. So the other thing that we're hoping to do is to work with IT leadership across the state to identify those common asks, because that's the other, and you and I have discussed this. This is the other piece with the MITDP process right now, is that all of the asks are coming in individually from agencies. And there hasn't previously been the discretion or the ability to say, let's combine a bunch of these because they're actually the same function. So that's also what we're hoping to shore up as part of this. Yeah.
Two more quick questions. I'm sorry. If you read the MITDP.
You are our, Senate Chair of the Joint Committee on Technology and Information Technology.
So with respect to the MITDP reports, which you and I both agree are slightly lacking.
Yes.
Does this bill correct the reporting? Because I understand that was created by legislation and we should fix it.
Yeah, it does, and I'll let Marcy and Ashley, if there's anything you would add, speak to this specifically. But the other concern that Marcy and Ashley and I have with the MITDP reporting right now is that it's really focused on fiscal oversight. It's not anchored on project outcomes at all. And I think that's a critical piece of this that we hope this legislation will shore up. We need to think about, and also, harkens back to your question about project management. Right now, we really have fiscal oversight and fiscal managers on it, and we want to bring some more product and product managers to that.
If I can just
Sure.
add, I do think that the shift from looking at these as projects where we manage budget and timeline and we look at adjustments to budget and timeline to shifting to a model where we're looking at these efforts as products and we are thinking about if we are successful, what will be better? What are we really trying to accomplish? And it's not just modernize or replatform technology. It's thinking about the underlying business case. It's thinking about the users who are impacted. And it's thinking about what is the smallest thing that we can do to start to improve and move the needle and learn. So it is shifting to more of an agile and MVP type of approach, minimum viable product approach, which is very common in private sector technology and is best practice that helps us not gold plate our solutions or think about what is every single requirement that we might ever need, but what is truly the core functionality that we can build to start showing what is working and build some momentum.
This is the last one. So we've talked about the evolution of the MITDP report and it was debated at nauseum in the Modernized Maryland Commission. How do you see this bill fitting with the recommendations from the commission?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think that the recommendations from so there are a few different sets of recommendations from the commission. One of which, I strongly feel that we need and agree with you. We need to take this next step of looking at what the top IT projects are in the state. Like I couldn't agree with you and the commission more on that. Right now, as I said, all of the agencies are submitting their individual requests. And that does nothing to reflect what are the critical projects in the state. It doesn't tell us, which are the systems that serve the most users, that have the most security flaws, that are built in coding language that is impossible to hire for right now. We're not doing that sort of racking and stacking. And as you know, we have the investment framework. That's a really helpful tool. But the hard part now is taking that investment framework and using it to create that prioritized list of projects. So I see this as building on what the commission recommended, which is to create that prioritized list of projects and figuring out how to use the MITDP process to start attacking those projects.
So we might have to take this offline, but are you saying that an investment fund is not necessary?
I think that we can repurpose the MITDP the MITDP fund for that.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, any additional questions for our panel? Madam Secretary? Okay, seeing none, that concludes the bill hearing on Senate Bill 294. And that concludes our bill hearings for today. We're going to take a 5-minute break. We're going to want to exercise our voting muscle here. Just very briefly, we've got 3 low-hanging fruit bills, but we have to reboot the computer system. So we need a 5-minute break before we can. Thank you, Madam Secretary, for your testimony.